We talked on the show yesterday about how a King County Superior Court judge has invalidated I-2066. The judge, Sandra Widlin, who has a long history of donating to Democratic candidates, including Jay Inslee, who was in the courtroom when she invalidated the initiative that he wanted invalidated. She ruled it's unconstitutional because she said it violates a provision that says that citizen initiatives they can't include more than one subject, which is a little part that it's been used many times to invalidate initiatives that Democrats don't like, essentially. And so Greg Lane, who's the executive vice president with BIAW, they were behind with Let's Go Washington, the effort to stop the ban on natural gas. So that's what I-2066 sought to do, is maintain the ability for you to use natural gas in your home and your business. And so BIAW, obviously, builders have a lot invested in that. It's much more expensive for them to build a home and for people to have to reconfigure their homes, et cetera. So we asked Greg Lane to come on. We taped the interview with him earlier this morning. And I will tell you, he, given all the kind of behind the scenes stuff, political nature, political donations, he is quite unhappy with the ruling and how it all went down. Greg Lane, welcome back to Undivided.
It's great to be with you again, Brandi. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we got on the recording today before we started, and I was like, you look so glum. I mean, was this really, did you feel blindsided, or were you?
Well, on one hand, we weren't surprised. I mean, we knew the venue that we were in was going to be a challenge. But yeah, it was, it's the way the decision was made really was outrageous. And it really was a gut punch, I think, to all the citizens of Washington. I mean, the 550,000 people who signed the initiative, the 1.9 million that voted for it to become law. We knew that King County venue, a judge that was appointed by Jay Inslee, that, we were, we were concerned going into it, certainly, but the way the decision was made and the reasoning behind it from the judge, I mean, it was clear this was a done deal from the get-go, it undermines, I think, the credibility of the entire system, certainly the way this is coming about, and people should be very concerned moving forward about having an initiative process that really truly is operating the way it should be, and that is a check and a balance on the legislature. And if the rest of the judicial system is going to be, I hate to use the term rigged, but set up in a way that is just going to undermine the people's right to initiative process moving forward, that should concern everybody.
Yeah, it definitely has this chilling effect, right? Because initiatives aren't cheap to run, as you know, and you guys have been involved in this one since the beginning. I do want to talk about the ruling, but just sort of that sentiment about, in this state, after 12 years of Jay Inslee, you'd be hard pressed to find a judge that wasn't given their job by Jay Inslee.
Exactly right. Yeah.
There's so many other layers to this that have come out. This particular judge donated to Jay Inslee's campaign for governor. Jay Inslee turned around 2 years later, appointed her to the bench. She's also donated to some other Democratic candidates who went on to not support the initiative. And on top of that, this judge just last year donated to the head of the appellate court, where I believe that this case is going to go next. So in terms of conflicts of interest, do you guys have serious concerns about that?
We do have serious concerns about it. And I think, even in the courtroom, Inslee attended the hearing, which is remarkable in itself, but I think also was a very clear indication. I compare it to like, the old movie, The Sting, right? Where there's this was a setup. And when he walked into the room, the judge clearly acknowledged him and gave him, this look like, I got you. This is a done deal. Seriously, Brandi,
Really?
that's the way it went down. And when I was talking to our counsel, who was in the courtroom, she saw that take place and realized it's over. I mean, this was before oral arguments. This was right at the beginning, just this head nod, like, I got you.
That's
No,
quite an accusation, Greg.
no, that is, I think that's exactly what was going on there, clearly. And then if you look at the decision, the reasoning that she came up with to make the decision she did was clearly based on opposition to the policy. There is no legal basis at all to the decision that she rendered. So, this was set up, and I have no doubt in my mind about this. I know it sounds outrageous. It is outrageous. I I am not someone to talk in hyperbolic terms. You know
I
me.
do know
We've
that. Yeah.
had many conversations, but I think the word corruption here um, is applicable. Not financial corruption, but in the sense of 12 years of Jay Inslee appointing judges in this state that are going to make their decisions based on policy preference and not on any sort of legal reasoning. All pretense of objectivity or impartiality was thrown out the window in this case. I mean, the judge clearly had her mind made up. Clearly, it was predetermined. And so we move forward with that being the result. We knew that, the being in the court of King County, that things were going to be a challenge for us going in anyway. But to have it set up the way that it was set up, and the outcome that we got, we didn't anticipate. And I think that's what is most outrageous about this, and should be most concerning about it to just whether you're a Republican or Democrat, right? We all want the judicial process to be impartial and to be based on the rule of law. And we have now moved into the realm where that is not the case in the vast majority of venues in this state, and that's because of Jay Inslee.
Yeah, just to underscore it for people, because we have had many conversations. I mean, when you use words like rigged and corrupt, I mean, and you say you're not a guy who engages in hyperbole, it's very true. I mean, you've texted me before when I engaged in what you considered hyperbole on my show and gave me the old tisk tisk for it. So I know you to be someone who doesn't say things like that unless he means it. I mean, like I mentioned, the connection that this judge has to, politically speaking, to the chief judge in the appellate court. Is that something that you guys, I mean, what if that's the judge that you get?
Right. Well, actually, we're going to go direct review to the Supreme Court,
You are. Okay. But they could kick it
and
down.
in these cases, going direct review to the Supreme Court is justified and is really the step in the process that will be next. So we will skip the appellate court, and the Attorney General, who was co-defendant in this with us, it is a bit convoluted, but because it was state law, the Attorney General was the lead defendant. Right after the ruling, we were all in agreement that we were appealing directly to the Supreme Court. So we will be filing that in the next couple of weeks. We fully anticipate, as they have in the past, that they will accept it, and that we'll have a hearing in front of the Supreme Court probably late spring, early summer, sometime in May or June. So that will be the next step. So fortunately, we will avoid having to go through an appellate court, which, again, I don't think would be the best venue for us. The Supreme Court, as you know,
That's not the best venue either,
made up,
Greg.
right? I mean, but there are a couple things that give us some optimism and some hope at the Supreme Court. The first is that the reasoning of the judge of the decision that we got out of the Superior Court Friday is completely thrown out in terms of the Supreme Court. You go in front of the Supreme Court with a clean slate, arguing directly to the judges. And yes, we are appealing the ruling of it being unconstitutional, but the reasoning around how she got to that decision is completely irrelevant when it comes to the Supreme Court. So we're starting fresh there, which is good. The second thing is the Supreme Court will have to acknowledge and deal with Supreme Court precedent on these cases, which is in our favor, where the Superior Court clearly did not take that into account whatsoever, but the Supreme Court has to. So we do feel like we will get a more fair hearing and with the Supreme Court. The other key point and it should have had an impact on the Superior Court level, but certainly didn't, is there is a presumption of constitutionality that has to be proven by the plaintiffs as being unconstitutional. So the judges and the Supreme Court will go in with a presumption of constitutionality that has to be disproven by the plaintiffs in them making their arguments. And I think that also will be approached more honestly, I guess, by the Supreme Court than we got in the hearing at the Superior Court
Well,
level.
I hope so. But you still have a court where justices, many of them owe their seat to Jay Inslee, who made initial appointments before they ended up running for their seats. So that always concerns
Right.
me, especially if he's going to insert himself in person into
Yeah,
this
we'll see if
process moving forward. One more thing on this, just because you brought it up, and it's actually a point I failed to make on the show yesterday. The Attorney General's office, is helping to defend the initiative. I guess, and this is something I asked Nick Brown about when he was campaigning, because he was opposed to the initiatives. And
right,
I said, well, how
right.
can people trust that you're going to defend them to the best of your ability if you don't agree with them politically? And he assured us that he would. Did you feel like through this process, the AG's office was giving the initiative the best defense it could?
We do. We did,
Okay.
yes. They worked very closely. We have an outside counsel who used to be an assistant AG that is representing us, and she knew the attorney that they've assigned, and they worked very closely together, and they did give a very aggressive defense.
Okay.
And they were as appalled. That attorney, I will say, was as appalled by the process and the decision as we were, and there was no question that they were wanting to appeal the decision, and are right there in alignment with us on that. So yes, I get the skepticism. Our members have been skeptical of that as well, but we have been pleased with the defense that the AG has been giving
Yeah.
to the case.
Let me end with this, Greg. Just broader. You represent builders. You represent
Yeah.
the people who, I think are ready to help the state deal with its lack of housing and its housing
Yeah.
crisis and eager to do this. And there's just all these things going on. I mean, from this, which is a big slap in the face, rent control. I mean, that thing is just careening toward a signature from the governor, which is terrifying. And we've talked to other individuals about the chilling effect that would have on building in Washington state. And then you have this massive property tax increase that's being eyed by Democrats, which would increase the cost of housing for people. I mean, for your members and your builders and your industry, if all this stuff comes to fruition the way that Democrats hope it does, what is that going to mean for housing availability, for new building, et cetera?
It has it will reduce the ability to build affordable housing and provide home ownership opportunities for people. And that's, yes, our members are concerned about it, but we are more concerned about what the policy has to the citizens of Washington, both current homeowners who, now with this decision throwing out I-2066 are going to have to pay 150% increase in utility rates when they're forced to be all electric. They're going to have to pay $40,000 to $70,000 on average in conversion costs for their own homes. How many of those folks are going to be pushed out of the homes that they're in and be forced to rent again and not be able to own homes because of those costs? I think that's going to have an impact. The property tax increases are also going to have an impact on current homeowners being able to afford to stay in their homes. But it also increases the cost of new housing and provides less access then into home ownership for this younger generation or newer homeowners. And we're getting to the point, we're already to the point where only a quarter of the population can afford a mortgage on a medium price home in the state of Washington. We have the third highest medium price homes in the entire country, where are the worst in the country, number 51, even below Washington, D.C., in the number of units per capita in the country here in the state of Washington. So, I mean, we're beyond crisis point here, and they are only adding additional costs. And we tell legislators all the time, you can't make housing less expensive by making it more expensive, which is what they continue to do, right? I don't understand it. They say that they want to provide more affordable housing, home ownership opportunities for people, but yet they pass these policies that just increase the cost. And so, we're going to continue the fight. We're not giving up. We're going to appeal this decision all the way through the Supreme Court. We are actively, working against the rent control bill that's moving through the legislature and the property tax measures, trying to stand up for homeowner rights in these issues. But the numbers are challenging. They really are. We need to elect some new legislators moving forward if we're going to start turning this thing around and making progress in the other direction.
Yeah, elections have consequences. As much as we
They do.
complain about a bunch of Inslee appointed judges, people put him in office for 12 years, and that's just it. And, when we talk about these things also, I make sure, I rail against most taxes.
Yeah.
And my husband and I, we do fine. We don't want for anything, and we're not making big extravagant purchases. But when I think about the gas ban in particular, even though we do well and we're comfortable, I don't know how we would pay for $40,000 to $70,000 to electrify our home. So when I think about that and other gas or other tax increases, like, we'll manage. I still don't like it, but we'll manage. So this one, like, we're not on the margins at all. So I think about families that are very middle class, lower class, and it's like the people that Democrats advocate for. I'm like, there's no way they afford that. Right. So, I mean, if I've got to figure out, make a plan ahead for how we're going to pay for it, I don't know how so much the state pays for it. So it just really makes me sick to my stomach, to be honest. All right, Greg.
I totally agree. Yes.
Well, for people who don't know you, this is about as fired up as you get. I've never seen Greg Lane so fired up. So it's just all sorts of stuff going on.
This one's a big one, and it's big not just because we were the sponsor of the initiative, but it's big because I've lived my entire life here in Washington State. I've worked in the legislative process my entire career, and there are certain points in that timeline, right, where there are just huge leaps that demonstrate how far left we are moving in this state. And on Friday certainly was another huge sign that things are getting worse.
Yeah, gut punch. All right, Greg Lane, keep up the good fight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brandi.
Wild stuff. And hearing some of what was going on in the courtroom that day when Superior Court Judge Sandra Widlin decided to invalidate the voter initiative. That's pretty significant. And again, Greg Lane doesn't just throw out accusations, but him calling that ruling rigged and corrupt, suggesting that the judge and Governor Jay Inslee exchanged some sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge when Inslee walked in the room. And by any account, I mean, the political donations and appointments and all of that, how could it not give people pause about whether that ruling was rigged and corrupt? So it's insane. And the voters are the ones who lose. And, to pursue Inslee's climate agenda, trying to force a cost of $40,000 to $70,000 on families to electrify their home is utterly insane. That segment, sponsored in part by our friends at the Rental Housing Association of Washington. Become a member today if you're a landlord in the state, rhawa.org, rhawa.org. They are down there fighting tooth and nail against things like rent control, so God bless them for it.